I was in a convenience store with my little 8-year-old son the other day, and we always try to screen the children from the magazines. I'm sure you're all familiar with that that process of trying to avert your eyes as you try to buy something at the grocery store. And this was a little different situation, because in this case I actually said to my son, look at this picture. And who was the picture on the little People magazine or whatever it was? It was Britney Spears. Now, I don't know if anybody knows who she is. Normally, we obviously encourage I would encourage all of you to not have anything to do with looking at pictures of Britney Spears. She's a very sad person, isn't she? But the reason I pointed her out in this case to my son was because she's in a whole lot of trouble right now. And I think it's very interesting for us who are trying to live in a different way as Catholics to see the reward that's being given to the pop kings and queens of the pop music industry. And what Britney Spears is going through right now. This picture was a picture of her with a shaved head. Everybody, you probably have seen this. You almost can't help but see it. It's everywhere, because what's happened to her is she's crashed and burned. And no one wants to see that happen to a fellow human being, do we? We don't celebrate that. But on the other hand, it should give all of us, whether it's an old man like me or young people like you just starting out, a really good idea of where the pop culture is leading people these days, even those who are sort of, you know, as I say, the crown princesses and princes of the pop culture. Kind of look into the eyes, the vacant eyes of Britney Spears with her shaved head and in and out of rehab for drug abuse, and they're talking now about taking her children away from her because she's obviously not fit to be a mother. You can sort of see this maternal instinct even in somebody like Britney Spears. She wants to be more than that. So money, power, fame, MTV, VH1, all these things, they don't make happiness. They don't necessarily translate into happiness. And I think that's a great example. She's a great example of somebody who bears this out, that the pursuit of the cross, the pursuit of being ladylike, being like Our Lady, being like the saints, it may not seem to have the glory and the glamour that the pop music industry and the pop TV and movies that presents, but the dark side is not hard to find. Another good example would be this Anna Nicole Smith creature, who I'm sure no one knows in this room much about. I know not much about her, but to see what's happened to that, another youngish person, she's not an old woman, to see how this industry raises her to the top for just a few fleeting moments. And this is the way the devil always works. Raises her to the top, and then crash, down she goes, a drug addict, all sorts of problems. Her own son, it's a witness her own son, her own children dying. They're fighting over her body, they're fighting over her children, she's fighting with her mother. There's this horrible Luciferian, demonic evidence of where the culture is leading. Not only those of us who are tempted to get into rock music or pop music or go to see all the movies or watch all the TV, but also those who are performing. We see it right from the beginning. Elvis Presley. Anybody ever heard of Elvis Presley? Okay. The king of rock music kind of does the same thing in the end, crashes and burns. He's a drug addict. He dies a very sad and horrible death, lonely death, a miserable person. So it's good to think about these things when we, especially as young people, are at these crossroads all the time. What am I going to do? What do I really believe? What do I want to be? How much of what I'm being taught in school by the priests and by the nuns and by my parents, how much of that do I believe and do I want to define me versus am I just tolerating it to stay out of trouble? And these are the things you're going to have to be asking yourselves now as you get older. I don't mean to be old Grandpa Mo here, but I am old Grandpa Mo, so let me be old Grandpa Mo with you. It seems like when I see you, I went to a school very similar to this, and oh gosh, what would it have been? I graduated from there in 1984. It seems like 84 minutes ago. It happens so fast that you go from being young and idealistic and you have the future in front of you to being old like me and tired and not able to handle giving a few words on 2.5 hours of sleep. So it happens very, very, very fast. So, but we're at the crossroads, you're at the crossroads, you have to decide, what are you going to do? What do you really believe? And in a sense, I'm so glad that it's the older kids that are here. I didn't know for sure if there would be younger students. And typically when I talk about music and culture, you don't want to speak too much about some of this dark side of the culture in which we live in, because you don't want to dwell on it. but you have to be aware of it. And so I'm not going to go into any graphic details or anything else. But we don't have a lot of time. They're moving very, very quickly right now against schools like this, against families like yours, against people like you. They don't want the beliefs and the faith and the morality that this school represents. They don't want that to be in the world. They don't want that to spread in society. They want to shut it down. They call it, you know what they call it? They call it hate. What you're being taught in this school, which is based on 2,000 years of Catholic teaching, Catholic tradition, Catholic history, the civilization that built Christendom, that built Europe, that built the greatest cathedrals, the greatest music, the greatest opera in the world, they're now calling that civilization, that faith, hate. Why? Because we believe the whole world should have this belief, this creed of ours. We believe we should share it, as the Church has always taught. We have to share our beliefs with society in which we live. But if we do that now, we're not tolerating those who don't share our beliefs. You see how it works? So in saying that there's a need for conversion, what they're saying against Christianity and against Catholicism is when we say there's a need for conversion, that means we're being intolerant of our neighbors who don't have the Catholic faith. And therefore, who are the haters? We are the haters. The new definition of hate, then, is to follow Christ. So the problem is, and how do I know this? Because I don't know if any of you have heard this or not, but recently, most of the traditional Catholic movement was designated a hate group by an organization called the Southern Poverty Law Center, running from the Society of St. Pius X all the way over to the Remnant and everything in between, has been designated a hate group by an organization that monitors Nazis, Ku Klux Klans, ugly outfits like that. They're now trying to include traditional Catholicism in their list of hate groups. So what's the deal for us, for you guys, even for you younger ones? We don't have a lot of time to be saying, well, I'm going to be discerning what I'm going to be if I'm going to take Catholicism seriously. Even at 10, 11, 12 years old, you are being called, and you are given, you know this because you're sitting here and your parents are so happy to have this school. You know that you've been given a grace. You've been given something very special in that you don't have to deal with what the little Britney Spears fans at 10 years old are having to deal with, which is not a glamorous thing, as we already talked about. So what to do? You know what you're learning, your catechism. You know, for example, what if I were to say to you, why did God make you? What would you say? It's a Catholic school, huh? God made you to know Him, to love Him, and to serve Him in this world, right? So that you can be happy with Him forever in the next, okay? Let me ask you a question. You don't have to answer this. You don't have to raise your hands if you don't want to, but because you're teachers and some of your priests are here. But how many of you like rock music, pop music? That's a loaded question. There's a brave girl. Stand up and take a bow. Okay. Very good, very good. No, the reason I ask that is because one of the real tragedies of how this issue has been dealt with in the past, even when I was young, is to say, to stand up here and say, if you like that stuff, you're going to hell. There's something wrong inside of you, okay? Kind of this very extreme and severe way so that all young people are afraid to say, well, I kind of think it's catchy. You know, I kind of like these little ditties. They're kind of fun. They make me want to dance or whatever. So what I would say to young people is let's get past that. Of course it's likable. It's made to be likable. If it weren't likable, it wouldn't have had the success that it had in taking a largely Christian society in the late 1940s and early 1950s, nominally at least, and destroying Christian morality and Christian morals with the sexual revolution, the drug revolution, the revolution against family, the homosexual revolution, and so forth. The music is what made those revolutions happen. You're too young to know specifically which revolutions I'm talking about, but maybe you've heard names like John Lennon. Maybe you've heard names like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, some of these old men, even older than me, than I am, who were instrumental in getting rock music started. It was back when it was still rock music. Now it's pop, or it's R&B, or it's whatever the next generation wants to call it, but it's all basically the same music. And so it's so important to realize that the fact that you like it does not mean anything. First of all, it doesn't mean that you're evil, because the devil always does this. He always does, no matter what we do, even when we choose to sin, we're choosing what we think to be a good, what we think is going to make us happy. And so it's the same with rock music. The fact that it's pleasurable